go. So hello everyone and welcome. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend with us for this VC panel, also from the European Innovation Academy program. Let's get into it. So hello everyone, my name is Jaime Joshua Gonzalez. I'm a fourth year studying business admin at Haas. I am a European Innovation Academy ambassador, one of two European Innovation Academy ambassadors for this year's EAA program that's being held this summer. The reason why I'm an ambassador this year is because it was a difficult challenge for me to start off in the startup industry. Helping other students is what I really want to do. And also here we have Anna, another ambassador.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Rio Anna, I swear. I'm majoring in econ and business. And I guess fun fact about me, I'm from Brazil and I participated in the program in 2019. And that's the reason why I actually wanted to become an ambassador, so that I could help students take part in this amazing adventure. So now, okay, yeah, we have here Ken and Steven who were not able to join us, I think, yeah. But they are the program coordinators. They will teach you during the boot camp, which I will talk more about in the next slide. So we'll be going over an overview of the program as a whole. And then the first part of the program is the methods of entrepreneurship, which you receive 2 units for it. And then during this first week, you have a fantastic learning experience. Trust me, like you will have a very interactive class with Steven and Ken that teaches you all about leadership and all the skills you need to succeed at EIA. So another good thing about this class is that you receive 2 units and it won't feel like a class. Trust me, it's so interactive, so amazing, so different from what we're used to, and you see. And then after that, you will be able to put those leadership skills into practice at the virtual European Innovation Academy. And then you'll be receiving 4 units for that. EIA is the largest entrepreneurship program in the world. And it will provide you with all the tools necessary to build a startup in 15 days. It might be hard to believe. You can go to the next slide. Oh. Okay, yeah. It might be hard to believe, but you will be able to adopt a global perspective without even leaving your home. You will be working with students from all over the world, from very different countries, time zones, everything. And you'll be able to work with people from different cultures, and that's a unique opportunity. It's an opportunity to discover, learn, and embrace everything about international and cultural diversity. And you'll understand the challenges of a global startup through working with people from different time zones that are scattered throughout the world. So you can go to the next slide. You will have to choose a CEO for the team, a CMO, a CDO, a CBO, and a CTO. And you will have to work together to be successful. And trust me, you will have to learn to communicate with different people from various backgrounds and cultures. It's very different from just a normal group project that we're all used to. And then you also receive the support of amazing mentors from different parts of the world who will guide you in the process of building a startup. And then finally, you'll get the opportunity to pitch your idea to investors. And on top of that, the top 10 teams will have the chance to pitch on a virtual stage broadcasted globally to over 10,000 people. Now I'll pass it on to Josh, who will talk more about the internship portion of the program.
Thank you so much, Anna. So here we have the third and final portion of the EAA program. It is a 3-week-long intensive program where students will be placed with a company, a startup company, based off of like their likeliness of like how well they'll interact with certain, let's say, companies. And so these companies can range from marketing, tech, finance, and so much more. And also right here, we have a quote from a student who has completed the program in the past, the internship portion. This pushed me outside of my comfort zone to explore new things and research different parts of the globe. Now, definitely, I want this quote to sink in a little bit, because this program, as well, the European Innovation Academy program, as well as the internship program, will definitely push you outside of your comfort zone and help you grow professionally and personally. So here presented in front of you, we have a certificate in entrepreneurship and technology. This certificate will be similar to the one that you may receive if you have the program in the future, but it'll look similar to the one presented in front of you, but hopefully next time it'll have your name on it. as well as 6 upper division units, internship experience and startup experience. Definitely something that you can put on your resume, hint, hint. And so what I've heard from students in the past who have completed the program is that it's a life-changing experience, one that they are so thankful for, and it's in an environment that fosters inclusivity and it pushes people, and it also gives students the potential to develop lifelong relationships. So in the chat, let's see, Anna, can you place the link inside the chat? So if you guys are interested in the program, you can definitely apply. We're gonna start transitioning into the VC panel in just a moment. Let's see. Okay, awesome. So also you can subscribe for updates through this QR code if you guys want to scan in front of, with the screen in front of you guys. And then subscribe, leaving your email in the middle of the page. And then throughout the semester, you guys can receive updates. So now we have the VC panel and the Q&A. So right here, the guest speaker, Duncan Davidson, general partner at Bullpen Capital, venture capitalist, Paul Holliman, former Disney executive and mentor at 500 Startups, angel investor, and Tiffine Wang, partner at MS&AD. So Anna, if you'd like to take it away with a few questions.
Yeah, actually first, would you like to introduce yourself so that we can get started with the Q&A if anyone has any questions? But can we start with Duncan, maybe? Just talk a bit.
I'll be happy to. I first want to comment that your picture
of
mentors,
classical music.
Can you hear me okay? I turned the classical music off, but can you hear me okay? The picture you had of various mentors had the VC in a suit. So Paul wins this. I'm not wearing a suit, but look at him in this picture. Suit, tie, total Disney. Bullpen Capital is a small fund. I'd been in a bigger fund before. Before that, I'd started a couple of companies. For those of you who have learned the magic word SPAC, I had 2 IPOs back in the .com era. And I think we're back in that craziness again, this time with SPACs. Bullpen is a post-seed fund. So when you get into the wild world of venture capital, you find it's not just seed A, B, C. There's pre-seed, post-seed, seed, and a bunch of other animals in this menagerie. So we picked post-seed, which is around in between the seed round and the A round. It's kind of a neat place to be because we can apply a lot of metrics to the companies. A post-seed company has already come out of launching. It's got revenue, and we can look at it with a little green eye shade and understand how well they're doing in the marketplace. So that's us. We're a small fund. I think we've got 5 funds so far. The most recent vehicle is about 135 million we're investing out of, which in VC land is really small. So much more later if you'd like, but that's probably enough about Bullpen. Over to Paul, I guess.
Yeah, sure. Definitely. Paul, take it away.
Sure. Hi. So thanks, Duncan. And yeah, the picture is a little formal, isn't it? So I don't wear a suit and tie very often. So my background is Disney, and my introduction to venture capital was kind of accidental, where I was head of strategic planning for Walt Disney Studios Motion Pictures, and was really tasked with looking to the future and innovation, and kind of understanding what technologies were coming and how fast they might disrupt some of the things we do. And so I approached it from more of a just a learning standpoint, and then really fell in love with entrepreneurship and started doing a lot of angel investing, and that's kind of propelled me through my post-Disney career, where I'm a mentor at 500 Startups and an investor in residence, made hundreds of angel investments over the years. And to Duncan's point, I'm kind of earlier than he is, and so I'm more at the seed stage, and I've actually kind of moved up the channel to pre-seed, where I'm investing really early in companies. And then maybe to Tiff.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tiffine Wang. I'm a partner at MS&AD Ventures. It's a $120 million early stage global fund, so I invest all over the world. I'll write check sizes of $500K to about $2 million and invest in a pretty wide variety of things: insurtech, fintech, mobility, digital health, impact, sustainability. And I've actually been part of the EIA family for a very, very long time. I've actually helped build out their mentoring program, and I've been advising and mentoring for EIA for several years. I've been through several iterations of this, so happy to answer any of your questions.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Josh, I think you can stop sharing screen, and then we can move on to the Q&A so that people can ask any questions you might have. I also have a list here if you're shy at first, but please feel free to ask any questions, like anything at all. They're here to answer anything you want to know. So just feel free to type in the chat or unmute yourselves, however you feel comfortable.
So Berkeley time includes shy students. That's totally wrong. Hey, I want to make a comment up front. The program that EIA runs over in Europe is fantastic because it's basically a compression of what all the accelerators run, Y Combinator, 500 startups and all that. You're there almost 24/7, so it's very intense. So what YC might take 11 weeks to do, you try to compress down to 3 weeks. And then the Berkeley programs throws in their prep time ahead of time. So you guys all come in so far ahead of the rest of the students. They all want a Berkeley student on one of their teams because you guys have secret knowledge. But everybody that goes there has a terrific time. It used to be in Nice, now it's in Lisbon when it's actually physically. Is it going to be done in a place this year, Anna? I don't even know. But it's a fantastic experience in a resort town in summer in Europe. So, and I'm sorry to hear you can't get flunked out. I always hope the VCs could grade, but I guess we can't do that, can we? We have to be nice. All right, questions?
And actually, is it going to be in person or is it all virtual this year?
No, it's all virtual this year. So basically, we're going to have everything that the program usually offers in person, but it's going to be online. So the keynote events, for example, they will all be recorded online, and they will have access to it. And then there's also, the class will also be online. EIA will have some synchronous and some asynchronous parts as well. But again, like you still have access to all the mentors. You still get to know a team. You have to work with a team like 24/7. It's the same thing. But unfortunately with no travel because of COVID. However, there is also a portion added to the program, which is the internship portion. So basically after you go through the leadership week where you learn all the skills that you need to succeed in the entrepreneurship world, and then you go to EIA and kind of like start that out and put that into practice, and then you get to experience that in a real startup company by doing this project placement internship. But then it's all going to be online. But again, I think it's still like, it's not really being physically in Portugal. I think it's more about like getting to know people and networking and, you know, like finding out more about yourself. I think it's all of that you can still do over Zoom.
I see, Tiffany. That means nothing prevents us from going someplace cool. We go to Tahiti or something and just dial it appropriate. That sounds like a good
There
thing.
you go.
A question has come in.
Yeah, so Olivia asked, what skills do you all think a successful VC needs to have? Is there any type of work experience you would recommend having before going into VC?
Well, shall I answer that? I mean, the old world, not many years ago, the answer was go into banking or finance and become a finance weenie. Nothing wrong with that. But the new world is all about go get yourself some real experience in a company, especially at the seed or even up to the post-seed area. We all spend a lot of time helping the companies out. And especially today, there's been a great democratization of startups. So there's a whole variety of people starting companies from all types of places around the world. And yet they still need mentorship and help, and they expect the VC to be able to help them. So if you've been in a startup or in say, a rising tech company, you're much better able then to be a VC and do advice and mentoring, not just put on the green eye shade and figure out what a term sheet looks like. Tiffany, Paul, do you want to comment on this?
I think VCs nowadays come from a lot of different backgrounds. It does help to have some sort of financial foundations, but actually you need to have a very strong network You need to have unique perspective and be able to filter through a lot of companies, and you need to be able to support the companies. For most sort of junior roles, you're going to come in as an analyst and you're going to help, go through a bunch of spreadsheets. But the other route would be to go through, if you go and went and had some operational experience, or if you founded a startup and had an exit, then you could potentially join as a venture partner or a partner with a firm. So there's a couple of different routes into venture capital.
What Bullpen Capital started doing about 6 years ago was hiring somebody out of college, sometimes two people. And they're the analysts, as Tiffany said, and they get to learn all the secrets of venture capital. And then we kick them out of the nest and say, go join a company. So the first one of these is now in a company in LA called Fama. The second one decided to go into another venture fund, and he's regretting it. He'd probably prefer to be doing something different. The third one is a fascinating woman. We're going to find a great place for her to go and get operating experience. So she's working on that too. We think we have the company, you just got to work out the timing. So there is a path in where you start as a junior person, you do the analyst stuff, you really figure out how VC works, but then you go off and get real operating experience so you can get the full package if you want to come back to venture.
And I can't add anything to that advice. I think it's perfect advice.
You could go to Disney too.
There's no path to being an angel investor, right?
Disney, no doubt at Disney.
So we have another question in the chat. Would prior entrepreneurship experience be a plus to apply for this program? So from my personal experience, I don't think it would. But would you like to add anything? Like, what do you think? Have you seen like students with experience, do they succeed like more than the others?
I think having some curiosity is probably more important than having actual experience. The actual experience will be helpful, but sometimes if you already have, you're sort of set in your ways into the program becomes a lot harder because the whole program is built for you to learn in different ways. So it's probably a little bit easier if you come with an open mindset and a lot of curiosity and willingness to learn and experiment and try different things.
You know, just to comment on this, I've watched a lot of people come into these type of programs, not just EIA, but others. And a lot of accelerators now have companies that go through 2 acceleration programs. One, it's kind of interesting this happens. There's something about doing it a second time around, having a little experience where, as Tiffany said, you could have learned the wrong things the first time around. So if you're willing to come in and get and relearn and listen, it'll work out really well. What some people do is they come in already with some ideas in their head of what they want to do a startup. The idea of the program, you don't need to do that. You get a team together, you brainstorm, and you come up with an idea in the first couple of days. But some people have come in bringing ideas and some experience in. So again, just to emphasize what Tiffany said, it can work, it can be helpful. You'll learn a lot more, but you got to be open to this experience to make it work for you.
Yeah, and I'll just add that I think probably some of the benefits I've actually seen with people taking the program before is they get to make this network. They get to build relationships with 4 other people from different places and learn together, right? And so I don't think there's any prerequisites to like, oh, it's an advantage if you've got startup experience before. It might be, but really I think the real learnings that you're going to get is really how to work together as a team and how to learn together as a team. There's no experience required for that.
I think Brandon's asking a VC question on an EIA question.
Yeah, those are welcome too. So how much of your time is spent finding strategic acquisition to grow your portfolio companies? Or do you seek growth in other ways?
So I don't know if this is meant for, usually VCs don't make strategic acquisitions, or is the question if the portfolio company wants to make strategic acquisitions?
Yeah, so I was just wondering, because I'm actually a research intern at a buy-side advisory acquisition company. Okay. And so a lot of the work we do is with like smaller companies, and sometimes they're VC partners or their private equity company that they work with. So I was just wondering if that's something that you guys are involved in.
The later stage VCs, growth VCs, CDE round would worry a lot about this, particularly if the company doesn't have a second act. The first act did okay, they don't have a second act. The seed level doesn't worry about this. But it does happen occasionally. Occasionally, like for example, we have a company called Carbon Health, and it's doing really well right now. Carbon started off as two separate companies. One of them was an app. This is the guy we invested in, great founder. It was an app that, and with AI behind it. And for those of you who looked into this at all, people have been trying to do an expert system to diagnose what's wrong with you since the 1980s. So 30 years of failure. And he came along and said, we're doing it wrong. They're doing sort of a hierarchical logical structure. Screw that. He used machine learning, and within 3 years, he overtook 30 years of mistakes. And he has this fantastic front end. You answer a few questions and it has a pretty good idea of what's your problem. And then it directs you to go to a clinic, rush to the hospital, take some aspirin, whatever the answer is. Well, he found out great technology, who cares? So he merged with a clinical operation that was trying to create a modern clinic, like Uber for a doctor. But basically, ahead of time, you do all the work to get prepared. You go into the meeting, you see the doctor within 5 minutes, bam. It's a whole different experience. So the combination of the two is huge, and that created a unicorn, an over $1 billion company. So yeah, sometimes that does happen. The VCs, though, are not the ones who figured that out. This is a great entrepreneur who figured that out. Brandon, your experience on the buy side, I think, is useful in a different way. A lot of the learning you get as a finance person and wherever you are is translatable into venture. It may not be directly translatable, but everything you're learning at some point becomes useful in some of these companies, particularly when you're thinking of an exit or you want to look at the next round, you want to make better arguments and models. So your skill is useful. It's just the strategic acquisition part is usually done by the company itself.
Yeah, and when I'm thinking of, or when I hear strategic acquisitions, I think more of very large corporations going into buy companies. I've worked for a few of them, and that is something that they think about. In terms of being a VC, what I do have a small Rolodex of people in corp dev or potential buyers of, the startups in a specific sector, but it's probably not something I think about all the time.
We have another question, a really good question from Adriana. What are key characteristics that you look for in a founder?
Tiffany, Paul, you want to start? I've got a pithy way of talking about it.
Yeah, I can take the earliest perspective, right? So usually with founders, and so there's really kind of three criteria that I look at as an investor. And one is team, which is the founder, right? Our founders. And the other is product and market size. And so when I look at the team, and most investors would say team is a really important one of those things. And so I'm looking for somebody who has passion, who is going to be very hardworking, who isn't going to, because you have to wear so many hats as a founder, especially early before you really start hiring. And so you have to be able to really kind of time manage very effectively. And so I'm looking for somebody who just has this quality of persistence, I think, maybe, and like never says no, but at the same time, you want somebody who's thoughtful, because you have to do a lot of different things. So I think in a founder, I'm looking for somebody who's going to do the hard work and really see it through to completion. An example I would give is sometimes I look for kind of a personal, I call it an unfair advantage, like they might have a stake in the game, right? So if you're starting a jewelry company, you might want to have a background where people in your family have been jewelers for generations, and so it's passionate to you, and you've got some reason that you're excited about it. Or you might start some kind of something to help people fight wildfires, and you might have first responders in your background. So I look for things like that, but it's not it's one of those things. Duncan will tell you, you see really talented people, and sometimes they don't succeed on their first try, and so it's just the relationship that you build sometimes with those early investments.
I think like the unfair advantage is very important from the team, but also just, the persistence. So I'll give you an example. During COVID, when the lockdown just happened, that disrupted, I have a portfolio of about 45 different companies, but at that time, I think it was just a little bit smaller, but the CEOs all reacted a little bit differently, but the majority of them, even though during the lockdown, right, some of them, all their plans got turned upside down, right? So the CEO needs to be able to survive through, well, what am I going to do next? But not only that, but come out as the leader, because they're also managing the VCs. They're also managing the team expectations. They have to fire people or lay people off and still keep the company afloat. And being able to do that with energy and continuing to sell a vision is very, very difficult. And I was very proud for a lot of my CEOs to be able to turn that around, because we had so many, portfolio companies to catch up with. But a lot of them, they already had their plan together. When we asked for the catch-up meeting. And so that's very, very important.
So let me add, those are great sort of ways to think about a good founder. We actually want to answer a question, and we could theoretically ask the founder this question, but you never actually do that. But the question is, do you want to be rich or do you want to be right? And a lot of founders come back and rich, because they think I care about them being rich. I wouldn't mind you were all billionaires, but no, that's the wrong answer. If you go into this to make money and that's your goal, it's the wrong goal. We want you to want to be right. Now, what does that mean? It means you have some unique insight. And normally when you have a unique insight, everybody says, oh, that's a stupid idea. Your parents go, become a doctor, become a lawyer, stop with this. All your friends dump on you. And that's what we love to see, because you want to prove them all wrong. When I say you want to be right, you want to prove them all wrong, that your unique insight is stunning and wonderful, and you're going to break through barriers, do the type of things that Tiffany and Paul talked about. You're going to be persistent. You're going to make it work because you're driven to prove them wrong. And so that's my simplest way of putting it. Now, it's got to be coupled with a unique insight. A lot of people come with companies that are 10% different than 5 other companies we see. And it's like, really? Unique insight people come up with some great idea that's unique. And even when everybody poo-poos it and says you're an idiot, prove them wrong.
I love that. I absolutely love that.
You can steal the story if you want.
Thank you. We have another question right here from Olivia. What are the main ways that you find new startups to mentor and or consider for VC investment? This person gives a couple of examples, your personal networks, looking at companies who have graduated certain accelerators, startups who reached out to pitch to you, etc.
Yes. You got any more examples?
Yes to all of the above, right? And to Tiffany's point, the network is really important, right? And so all of us spend a tremendous amount of time growing that network because it gives you access to what we call deal flow, right? And the more, the more deals you see, you hit a point where you just sort, right? And you're just really looking for things that feel high potential, and then you kind of focus on those. So all of the above. It's one of the reasons I actually started mentoring at 500 Startups was it gave me access to companies earlier in the game, right? And so I just wanted to find companies before demo day because I know I could invest on better terms.
Yeah, last year we closed about 15 new investments, and the majority of them came from introductions from the network.
Yeah, I think that's right. From Bullpen's point of view, since we're post-seed, we like to talk to the seed funds. And we get a lot of deal flow from the seed funds. But that turned out over the last 10 years not to be the best source of deal flow. The better source of deal flow was referrals from prior founders and CEOs or people that we had a connection with, sort of warm leads coming in. And our whole thesis and how we run post-seed includes looking for deals that may be in an out-of-favor category or the wrong city or the wrong type of founder, in the sense that it's not in the core pattern recognition of the VC industry. And we've had some fantastic founders that would have a hard time walking down Sandhill Road getting money because they didn't fit the profile, but they turned out to have a stunning insight and have that chip on the shoulder. Getting to them was a little bit harder because usually your own network and the people you've talked to all talk to the same people. And so we've actually done some outreach to go broader and try to stretch other sources coming in. One thing to emphasize about this, both for the VC and for the people inside of companies, you know, your job comes and go, your school or whatever, but your network lasts forever. And so your personal network and how you develop your network is really the secret to the whole thing, both on the VC side and on the founding side.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely think that networking is the answer for literally everything nowadays. And like through the program, you definitely get a chance to do that a lot. So I know it's on Zoom, but like really try to make the most of it with anyone you meet. Just like don't make friends just because out of like interest, you know, just like, oh, that person is that person, so I want to be friends with them. But like really make sure that you really like make use of the mentors, you know, like the investors you'll talk to, like people like, you know, it's amazing. It really opens so many doors. Okay, awesome. So we have another question from Annie. What is the most important thing you look for when evaluating potential investment in a startup?
I can go first, maybe just because it'll be sequential. So it's because I'm earlier in the stack with pre-seed and seed. And so usually the one thing I'm looking for, because I see a lot of founders and kind of the magic thing is you might see a great team and a great product. Product, I always just kind of condense it down to, does the world need this, right? And if the world doesn't need this, then maybe it's really not the thing you want to invest in. With market, it's kind of the important thing, right? So you might have a great team and a great product, but to do an early stage investment, you're anticipating that they're going to get another round of funding and then another round of funding. And so to do that, they actually have to be venture scale. And so they have to have the ability for Duncan or some later stage VC to write that next check and then the next check, which means they have to have network effects and the potential to be huge. And so if it's going to be a fairly small business, that's a small business. It's really not like an investable venture business. So I kind of use that as like the one thing is, oftentimes if I'm at a point of decision, it'll be, is this really going to be venture scale or not? That's the early look.
So there's a lot of companies that I think are good that are out there, right? But, you know, we'll meet thousands of companies, but we don't really get to invest in that many. It's a very small amount. So I think a common thought for us is, can we not invest in this one, right? Like we have to, like this experience of we have to do this one or else we're going to miss the boat, like some version of that. Because there's so many companies that they come in and they always say the same thing. We're the only one who's doing this, but I just met like 5 other ones this week that's doing the exact same thing. So there needs to be something really unique, you know, especially with the way the founder thinks.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. The most important thing is the interesting part of the question. If you talk to lots of VCs, they'll give you pretty much a consistent answer. You know, the team, the product, the market. But that doesn't tell you much, right? It doesn't really differentiate. Inside of our own fund, we have different people who have different points of view about deals. And that diversity of their thinking and the different vectors into whether good or bad deal is very powerful, especially when they yell at you, you idiot, this is a stupid deal. But you learn something every time people do that. To me, the learning over like all the venture industry going back a long time, and this actually comes from a guy named Don Valentine, who started Sequoia, the most successful venture fund. His learning was really simple and very powerful. And before I give you what he said, Peter Thiel's book, 0 to 1, which is worth reading, echoes it in a different way. The most important thing is that you're going after a fast-growing market. The 0 to 1 idea of Peter Thiel, it may be a market with no revenue yet. It just may be a nascent market. But in general, you're going after a market that'll grow so fast and have such opportunity, you could be an idiot and still make money in effect. And that is more important than the quality of management, actually, and the quality of the product. There's other things that matter, but that's the biggie. How you know that is a different question, but I think that's the most important thing. One of the biggest problems VCs get into is what I call a false positive. For example, VR was going to be the greatest thing in the world in 2016, and Oculus sold to Facebook for what? $2 billion, $2 billion, whatever. It's all very cool, right? And nothing's happened. It's still growing and it's still selling, but it didn't become that fantastic market, and it probably will, but who knows when. So sometimes you get a false positive on it. But I think that's the most important thing. So when you think about what startup you want to do, pick a really interesting idea, unique insight, in what's about to be an explosive market. That's the best way to go.
Definitely. Thank you so much, you guys. Also, we have a question from Alicia. Working in VCs, you must deal with a lot of startups where you see incredibly new and disruptive ideas. How do you assess the risk of these and what factors go into this and make a judgment about whether it's worth investing? Disruptive ideas may not follow conventional patterns in the market, so I'm just curious about the decision process behind this.
Well, let me just make a comment, first of all. 90% of the deals we see are not that. We wish they were all that. But most people come in with incremental improvement type of deals. And like Tiffany said, I saw 5 others in the last 2 weeks. What makes you special? So actually, we live for those incredibly disruptive ideas. I'll give you an example of one that I saw just a little bit too late. Relativity space. I don't know if you guys know about this. Space is a hot category, growing like crazy. It fits the model right now. Space is now a thing to invest in. Relativity space is a 3D printed rocket. SpaceX gets a lot of credit for having a rocket they can reuse. It's got 20,000 parts in it. Relativity makes a rocket that has 200 parts in it, and it's 3D printed. And so it's all software. So if you blow it up or it doesn't launch right, you change the code. 3 weeks later, you get a new one, you try it again. It's such a disruption. And if you think about it, there's no way to build a spaceship that's going to go to Mars unless you 3D print it up in orbit, right? So that's the type of disruption you live for and you love. And I wish I had seen it about 1 round earlier.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
you've got like 500 angel deals. You must have an idea about how do you evaluate the risk and the disruption and all that.
Yeah, so Duncan isn't saying it, but what Bullpen's, their thesis is contrarian, right? And so if everybody's going left with AR VR, Bullpen's probably going right, and deliberately so, right? And so I think for me, yeah, I can fall in love with a startup just on kind of a cool idea that I haven't seen before. And like Tiffany and Duncan have both said, we all see so many pitches, and Duncan's being kind when he says 90% or something that we've seen before. It's higher than that. It's a lot of the same thing or small iterations. And so, I think I like people who are trying to solve problems. It's always been kind of like one of the skills that I've been good at, right? And so I recognize that when I see it. And it's just maybe thinking about something a little bit disruptive or a different way. An example I'll give you, and it's funny because it's an example that failed. I had invested in a company called Embark, which does self-driving trucks, right? And so they're doing really well, and they've got a lot of money, and they're on a track to be successful. But the part that they were hung up on was kind of that first mile, last mile of like, so we can have semi trucks drive up and down the freeway all day long. That's not hard. But how do you get them from the loading dock to the highway and back to the loading dock? And that's complicated. And so I saw a company called Starsky Robotics that was actually doing kind of like virtual things. So you're sitting at your simulator or your computer in your basement or your office, and you're actually driving the truck, right? And so it's like the second I saw that, it's like, oh, that solves the problem. That's the answer. I'm going to invest in the company. The problem with them is they were kind of pre-5G, so they couldn't overcome the lag problem of I'm about to back up to this loading dock or pull out in the traffic, and I can't have any lag and the data that I'm reacting to. So they failed, but it was still the right idea. And if I saw it again, I'd probably invest again. So just something that you look at and go, oh, that's brilliant, right? I'm always looking for that, and it's rare.
Tiffany, I got another comment. Do you have one, or should I just keep going?
Oh, go ahead.
Tiffany actually loves these type of deals, so she's being surprisingly reticent to talk about it. I'll give you 2 examples that went through our portfolio. You want to know what the thinking is. One was FanDuel. FanDuel was started fantasy sports betting daily on a mobile app. We saw them really early, and we know the guy who invented that whole category. And when it came in, it was turned down by 85 venture funds. Maybe it's 86. It's kind of crazy. And so we invested because, as Paul said, we're contrarian and crazy, but we knew a lot about what they were doing. We knew it would take off like crazy. It's like mobile sports gambling and a gimmick to get around regulation. We also knew the biggest risk would be regulation. And so this thing took off like crazy. And then I guess the Attorney General of New York said there's gambling going on in this casino. And he tried to shut it down. And the consequence of that is there's been legalization of sports betting all around the US and the whole world, in fact. So that's one where we knew it'd be disruptive. We knew it'd be hard to fund because the venture industry turned their nose up at it. And we also knew there'd be regulatory risk. But having known those things, you can then proceed down a path. The investor after us was Comcast. Why? They have such an investment as a media company and sports to have something like this succeed. It makes perfect sense. And then Paul will love this. The next investor was Shamrock Holdings, which is a Disney connected thing, Roy Disney's thing. So we just had to follow a different funding path. That was part of the risk thing. Another company, just to give you an example, we think, is called Ipsy. Birchbox was a killer in samples for makeup and doing really well. And Ipsy comes along and they have a similar idea, but their unique insight was they were using a fashionista on YouTube. They were really the first to do this. They had Michelle Phan, who at one point was the most successful fashionista. And we looked at the economics and we realized, oh my God, using an influencer marketing is about half the cost to acquire customers of good old Birchbox. And we also looked at the data, and the data said they had 30,000 people trying to subscribe and they can only fulfill 10,000 because they had limits on makeup samples. So again, so what's the risk here? There's no market risk. This thing is exploding in the market. We have a way to invade Birchbox's market and beat them with lower cost of acquisition. Our risk happened to be just the logistics of getting enough samples into the boxes every month. And we didn't invest until they brought this amazing woman in who was just like the logistics expert. And we said, we'll invest in her. You come along for the ride. And the company took off. And it's now, I don't know, it's got $1 billion something in revenue, and it ran by the other company. But again, you see the risk we're looking at. Get rid of this risk, market, acquiring customers, get rid of this risk. You had to deal with the sample risk and the logistics risk. And that was the biggest. You knock off all the risk, why not invest?
So for the majority of my companies are actually doing some sort of disruptive idea. The main thing is we'll invest in founders that are experts in a specific category. So we don't really like incremental innovation. It's not that exciting for us.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Now we have a question from Adriana. How do you outreach to find founders of color, since there is a lack of diversity in VC-backed startups, unfortunately?
So I personally attend a bunch of different demo days, and I guess my network is pretty wide, and so I just spend time in different areas. So I don't target like a specific race or gender or ethnicity, but I do just scout a little bit wider. I think it helps.
So let me comment on this. We didn't. For the time we were in Bullpen, we didn't consciously focus on this, but we like dealing with out of favor founders and categories and all that. And looking at the stats, we actually have a much higher set of diversity founders than a lot of other venture funds. And it wasn't done because we were consciously trying to do it. It's done because our methodology is in effect color and gender blind by definition. We're more metrics driven and rather than being founder driven. But nonetheless, we just hired a wonderful female partner. The tricky part here is, although you think you just go out and hire a female partner, under the rules, you've got to do something different. So Sheryl Sandberg at Facebook came up with a good playbook, which is make sure the pool is 50-50 or the pool has a certain diversity, and not necessarily the finalists. And then when you go through the process, what'll pop out is the best person. We sort of knew that if we want to hire somebody into Bullpen, nobody wanted to be hired in a Bullpen who was hired for diversity reasons. They didn't want to be that person. They wanted to be hired because they're the best person. So by making the pool pretty diverse and fairly even in diversity, the best person was this wonderful woman who's now partner of our fund. So, and she reaches out into this whole world. She spends a lot of time in it. And we have other things we're doing. We're trying to get this wonderful Black woman started with a VC accelerator in New York and having a hell of a time, even though you think it'd be easy. It's just not easy. But again, it's a way to have, and she's focused on a certain category of founders, and it's a way to have, in effect, access into a community you wouldn't normally get access to. So there's more things we're going to be doing, but that's just some of the stuff we've been doing.
Yeah, and I can say it's my experience. So I'm not purposely looking for founders of any type, right? But I see a lot, and so kind of two stories that might be interesting. One is it's not of color, but there's a founder I know who has a firm in Boston called One Way Ventures, and his name is Semyon Dakash, and he's a Russian immigrant, first generation, and his fund only invests in first generation immigrant founders. And we had a long conversation about it one time, and he was like, it's not because I'm trying to be charitable or to enable first generation immigrant founders. He goes, I'm doing it because I'm a math guy, and it's much more to my advantage to invest in first generation immigrant founders than not, right? And he goes, so a typical VC firm might return 3 or 4x multiple on your money. Mine over time investing in first generation immigrants is 9x. And he goes, I'm basically, they're twice as likely to be successful, and they're twice as likely to have an outsized return. And so from his perspective, he's looking at like the hunger of someone who has to work a little harder, right? Or maybe doesn't have any backup plan, right, to do that. And I'd say the other thing is I'm seeing many more firms, like Monique Woodward has a firm where she's focused on founders of color, and then Paige Craig, who Duncan knows, is got a company in Atlanta now, a venture firm, basically an accelerator, which is focusing on founders of color. So I think there's opportunities coming. They're not coming nearly fast enough, but I think there's opportunities out there if that's what you're looking for.
Awesome, thank you so much. And then we have one last question right here from William. In the future, what problems do you foresee with the current entrepreneurship ecosystem, especially when it's getting more mainstream?
So as a VC, I found that question sort of worded kind of funny because we focus on looking for opportunities. So each of the problems that come up are all good things, because then it's more things that the entrepreneurs like yourself can go out and solve.
Just a comment. Yogi Berra, the great philosopher, said predictions are hard, especially about the future. So it's kind of hard to foresee correctly problems. If you look back on people's vision of the future, even 10 years ago, usually it's way off. I think we've had a problem in the ecosystem since the dot-com bubble, because in an effort to prevent a bubble, we almost killed off the IPO. And the consequence of that is to undemocratize wealth creation. And just the example is, you could have bought Amazon at its IPO, 400 million value, and you'd be worth 20 million today, put in 10,000 or something. If you waited to try to get into Facebook, it was worth $100 billion before the public could get in. So between 400 million and 100 billion, all the upside went to the insiders, not to the public. What is going on right now, I think, is really promising, is a democratization of startups, in the sense that even though it's more difficult for people of color, there's a great expansion of the avenues to get into this business. Y Combinator, the accelerators, programs like EIA are doing a really good job of getting people who wouldn't normally think of this as a career path to make this career path. I used to tell people, in the old world, you had two choices after college. Get a job or go to grad school. And if you can't do either, you go to law school. But I think now you got a third choice, which is you can actually go start a company. And it works. It takes a while for the mass of change to begin to impact. What I think the biggest problem in the future would be, venture is kind of a cyclical business. We had a really good bubble in the early 80s and it blew up. Then we had a really good bubble in the 90s. I love that period, it blew up. And now we're in another bubble again, another boom time, which is really amazing. It's gone on for 10 years, but it won't last forever. And often when you have the downturn after the real boom, everybody says, oh, it was all a bad idea, and they go away and they go to law school. Whereas that is the best time to start a company. The best companies are started in the bottom, not at the top. And so given the age of people here, I would just encourage you that the problem I would foresee if this boom blows up is you all get scared off from doing this. Don't. That's the best time to go out and get funded and get going and catch the next wave.
Yeah, and I would just add to it that we live in an age like we haven't had before, right? Because you see the ability to start a company for a very small amount of money, right? You can bootstrap, start a company with, 2 people in a garage and make it pretty big. And you don't have to have millions of dollars to do that. And so I think the thing I find most promising about entrepreneurship and innovation today is it is democratized, right? You can actually go do this, and that's why Duncan and Tiffany, I see so many startups is it's not that hard to do, and it's also harder to fail, which I think is maybe, if you're churning through and your first idea isn't the best idea, then if you can stay alive, you can pivot, you kind of refine that, then it gives you the option to really kind of hone that before you start to scale. So I don't know, it feels like a pretty good time for entrepreneurship and innovation. There's a Kevin Kelly book that you might look for that kind of talks about this is like the best time in the world, right? In the history of the world, because there's so much that's possible. And I kind of think that's true.
Yeah, I think going along those lines, I remember one thing that we learned with Ken actually during the Methods of Entrepreneurship Bootcamp is that underdeveloped countries usually have the highest number of entrepreneurs because there are more problems to solve. So people have to get creative and just like find a way to deal. So yeah, that's really interesting, just how to see everything connecting. So I'm not sure if we have time, but Annie has one last question. So if you want to give just a quick insight. And she asked, what are some common mistakes people make when pitching to VCs? So just a quick one so that we can wrap up.
My pet peeve answer is when a founder comes in and says there's no competition. It drives me crazy because they didn't do their work. They didn't do their homework. It's actually good to have some competition. What's best is when the entrepreneur comes in and says, this is where we are on the map. And, I've spent time looking at our competitors and this is how we're different, which is a much better answer than there is no competition, which 99.9%, that's not the case.
I'll let Duncan back clean up here, so I'll go next. So,
okay, why not? Bullpen.
It's a bullpen fun. So I think the common mistake I see, there's 2 common mistakes. So I do a lot of pitch deck coaching for early stage founders. And the first problem I see is pitch decks are communication, and their purpose is to get to a second meeting, right? And so oftentimes they're just not clear, right? It's like if you listen to a pitch and a minute in, you don't know what they do or who their customers are, then it's not a good pitch, and it's easy for your mind to wander. And I think the other thing I see often in pitch decks is the unsubstantiated claim as a fact, right? And so I saw one this week, and someone was doing some kind of a product, and the pitch was, media is broken and big stream advertisers have nowhere to go to connect with consumers. And I'm like, I don't think that's true. and it wasn't, right? But it was the core of their argument was this is the state of the world, and that's why we're important. You go, that's not accurate, right? And so I think you want to make sure that if you're going to make a claim, that it's actually a founded claim.
We're post-seed a little bit later, so the mistakes are different. I think the biggest mistake is not showing mastery of the subject. When you do a financial plan, it's really more an intelligence test that you understand the company and the business, and as opposed to being right, because no projection's ever right. But if they don't understand this, you ask them questions like, what's your cost of customer acquisition? I don't know. It's like, get out of here. Well, we don't know either. You're supposed to be a master of your subject matter by the time you come into us. That's probably the biggest mistake people make.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. So I guess we'll wrap up right now. We're just 5 minutes after the hour. So thank you all so much for coming. So this was just a teaser of what you're going to experience if you actually participate in EIA. You'll get to meet so many more people as amazing as our panelists today. So yeah, just like make sure you think about that and how amazing this opportunity is, and how people will be just like as amazing as what you experienced today. You just have more of that in every day and all the time. So be ready, because it's also a lot of work. But yeah, thank you all for coming. Any last minute thoughts from anyone?
Definitely. I also want to mention, I want to say thank you everybody for taking time out of your day to be here with us. I also want to mention again that the internship portion, it will be along with the EIA program, and students will have the opportunity to have startup experience. And then also students will have access to more mentors that couldn't participate if it was in person. So I just want you guys to keep that in mind, just in case you guys are thinking about that. But again, I'll put the link in the chat for the application process. But definitely, I really appreciate all of your guys' time. Thank you so much.
And we'll wave you all from Tahiti when you join the remote program. It'll be fun.
It's a great program. I hope you guys do it.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Here, guys.
Thank you so much.
Good job, guys.
Thank
Well done. I wanted to stay quiet. Hey, Alina's still here. Miss Kim, are you paying attention?
Nope.
Oh, yet. All right. So I think she's already applied. So hopefully she's confirmed. I think she already has someone she wants to work with this summer. So it'll
Awesome.
be interesting. But good job. I think the one thing is next time I would prep Duncan. Duncan has a tendency to put his foot in his mouth like a lot. And so he generally... I
sent him an email. I sent him like, oh yeah, the program's
he does emails.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah, the whole like, oh, you guys aren't going to be able to go have fun on a beach. Maybe we'll just go to Tahiti. Really?
How did he not think of Oh my God. Okay, it's fine. It's okay. I think people were kind of like, I don't think so.
Yeah. Anyway, so we learn, but definitely with some of the people, and you knew them, Anna, you knew them from the summer, so you knew kind of their personalities. You may want to just a note for any time you do these things is to prep every speaker, even talk to them briefly. I know they're busy, but just, hey, can I just get 5 minutes to just prep you a bit, just to give you context and a feel, so we can set the proper mood. And you might get resistance, but you may even want to give them a different start time. So the benefit of Berkeley time is you can take that 10 minutes that it's Berkeley time, and you can use that as a way of just prepping the speakers. You have a new student here.
Yeah, we have someone coming in. Oh no, did you mix up the time, Jessica? Hello.
Hi, Jess.
Hey, sorry. Yeah, it started at 6, huh?
Yeah.
I thought it started at 7.
If you want, I'm sorry about that, but if you want, you can, I'm gonna put my email in the chat so you can email me and I can kind of give you
an overview.
Yeah, and we also have a recording, so we might be able to share that with you too.
Oh, okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, the recording will be good. You can do it at twice the speed, so you can get through,
Go through it faster.
Yeah, exactly, right? This is what I've been telling my students is, if you come to my class, that's great.
2x speed.
But just do it at 2x speed is better.
Complete productivity.
Yeah, I get it, right?
I have an app that does that too for all my reading. So it downloads all my PDFs and reads them faster to me.
That's awesome.